comes from something called the Higgs field, where the Higgs particle gives mass to the Higgs boson via the full vector of electromagnetism. So reality only comes from the fifth dimension, or comes from light. There are various different theories on the Higgs field, explained beautifully in Penrose's Road to Reality, the Nobel Prize winner, mathematical physicist who won the Nobel Prize because he was a genius and his book is brilliant, but unintelligible to the non-mathematical literate. Anyway, the Higgs field makes things real, gives them mass, and it mixes with the full vector of electromagnetism. Therefore, if we're taking that light is gravity in the fifth dimension, crystals can link us to the fifth dimension via the piezoelectric effect. If and only if we are Nagwals, Nagwal men or women, and luckily I'm the only Nagwal on the planet because I've gotten rid of all the others. I've just used reality control to make them all Mandela effective, where they all vanish. All Nagwal men and women on the planet, apart from Dua, who's just slaveware, kill-shotted, are all gone. Thank you very much. But one can see that you can bring five-dimensional quantum collapse into being, and this of course will make a whole new range of things which we could call angriels, sangriels and taangriels. Why? Well, because the full vector of electromagnetism has along one of its vectors the Higgs boson, which from a certain observational viewpoint can be seen as this, the assemblage point. And if you read or listen to the fire from within, you'll see that inanimate things don't have an assemblage point. They're simply shells. But living things have assemblage points which are high up in man, in trees down by the bottom of the tree, and of course interdimensionals have assemblage points. So we know that they've got Higgs field because the Higgs field is locked up in the assemblage point. And that's why when you move the assemblage point, it makes what you observe real, because you're using the Higgs field to make what you're observing real. But here's the kicker. If you read Fire from Within, there are 40 types of energy body of inanimate things with no assemblage point. So how can they be made real? Well, obviously, when the things with assemblage points observe inanimate objects, there is a mixing, and we've explained quantum interactions, quantum entanglement. So that means that the inanimate objects around you gain Higgs field. There's a sharing when they're observed by a living thing, an observer with an assemblage point. Because if they've got no assemblage point, they've got no access to the Higgs field, and therefore, without observation, they haven't got Higgs field. I know physicists will argue with me. Yes, we've been going down the wrong road for 100 years, Tim, and you're completely off your trolley because there's no scientific evidence of assemblage points. Thank you very much, physicists. Keep going down the road, because 500 years from now, you'll be 500 years away from reality physics, and even less of a threat to me than you are now. Thank you very much. Keep up with the good work. So you can see why I'm a happy little camper, because if you're the only one who understands reality, then, and everyone else around you has been barking up the wrong road for at least 100 years, and that's your experts, then you can see I have unfettered dominion over everyone and everybody. Thank you very much. Now to continue, the assemblage points therefore must in some way, its Higgs field, be mixing with an inanimate object, so when they're measured, they've got mass. So when a rock drops on you, splat, whether you like it or not, you're crushed. Unless, of course, you can move it out of the way or teleport out of the way. Which isn't available, of course, to two-lobed people who, by definition, are observing and collapsing the quantum wave function from the matrix. Because the matrix is defined by two dimensions. So, by definition, all two-lobed people, which is everyone on the planet, are matrix entities, and only nagwals have access to the 4 vector and therefore the 5th dimension. And they therefore observe and can make matter do things that normal people cannot do, because they're collapsing the quantum wave function from a 4-dimensional perspective. But of course you can go into the 5-dimensional perspective when they burn with the fire from within. But of course, why wait to burn with the fire from within? Why not go into the 5-dimensional Riemann manifold? How can we do that, Tim? Well, I've just been explaining how a nagwal can get into the 5-dimensional Riemann manifold. You can simply bilocate. Remotely view the 5-dimensional Riemann manifold, wake up there, grab some 5-dimensionality with his right hand, bilocate back, and then stick it in himself. And this, of course, means that you've opened up a pathway to the 5th dimension if you're a nagwal, where instead of burning with the fire from within, you've actually inputted into yourself 5-dimensionality into your 4-dimensional being, and of course increased your dimensionality. As one can see, this is getting rather complicated, but of course it's not going to be very simple, is it? Because we're building angrials, sangrials, and terangrials, all stolen from my original manuscript by Morton Janclo, the agent I sent the book to and given to Robert Jordan and Amazon, and you can see why they've cancelled, because the CIA have worked out, my goodness, he's tricked us. Yes, I tricked you. Thank you very much, CIA, and American filth. Now, what that means is, when you've got a crystal, a 5-dimensional linked nagwal man, who of course has to be a precognitive remote viewer, because he needs to get to the 5th dimension. Can, by simply observing a crystal, give it properties that are radically different than a normal crystal. And And here, of course, we see when you squeeze crystals, they make electricity. That, of course, is producing light. Light's gravity in the fifth dimension. So crystals naturally link to the fifth dimension when squeezed.
Pressure has a lot of applications in our daily life, especially when you want to move a thing out of a tube, bottle, or a container. Similarly, electricity can also be squeezed out in a similar manner. The piezoelectric effect can be defined as the ability of particular materials for generating voltage in reply to an applied mechanical pressure or stress. However, piezoelectric materials are also able to perform another effect known as inverse piezoelectric effect, in which when piezoelectric materials are kept under the electric field, they convert the electrical signals into mechanical signals and may produce sound waves. Subscribe for more cool facts.
So, one can see that crystals can link us to the five-dimensional Riemann manifold. So what happens when a five-dimensional Nagwal, that's basically a Nagwal who's bilocated into the five-dimensional Riemann manifold, and he has the four vector within himself, plus the Higgs field along one of the lobes, which is his assemblage point. Interacts with a crystal, and then if he can move his assemblage point into the center of his body, that then would be the null point, which is where the potential assemblage point of inanimate objects is. And when they're observed by, say, two-lobe matrix entities, it slightly pulls away, so basically isn't there, it's at zero, but when observed, a little blip of assemblage point appears somewhere away from the 0 point along one of the axes of the four vector inputted into it by the observer, who of course, even if they're two lobe, has an assemblage point, which of course is inputted by the light, a four vector. So one can see that the act of observation by the observer, a collapse of quantum wave function, as we describe in the Copenhagen interpretation of reality, where a smeared out quantum wave function across the universe suddenly is localized at a certain position, which is limited and made fuzzy by Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. That, of course, the observer is linked with the quantum collapse and the assemblage points of the observer loses Higgs field to produce reality in what is observed around it. Hence, of course, Shames called this the world being run by black magicians who make the world the way it is. So one can see that inanimate objects are quantized, are quantum mechanical, and they're only made material and real by you, the observers. But what happens if, not a Nagwal man, but yours truly, who can enter the five-dimensional Riemann manifold without burning from the fire from within, and can bring five-dimensionality into the quantum wave function collapse. Observes crystals, which by definition link up to the five-dimensional Riemann manifold and electromagnetism because of the piezoelectric effect. Then, of course, you'd be getting, as we saw here, the inverse piezoelectric effect, which is movement of the crystal, which in itself can generate, not squeezed, but it's moving outwards, can produce torsion fields. Torsion fields, of course, can interact with the quantum vacuum or the zero-point energy, according to Russian research, to make new reality. So you would then have something that is different. A angrial, a sangrial, or terangrial. How can it be an angrial? Well, simply if yours truly inputs the five-dimensionality into the quartz crystal, it produces a positive torsion field. So when it's observed by an observer, remember they lose Higgs field to observe it and make it real. But of course the crystal's linked up to the Higgs field and five-dimensionality, so instead of losing Higgs field when you observe the crystal links you to the Higgs field, and the positive torsion field feeds Higgs field into you when you observe it. The complete opposite. That means then you become realer, and of course, if you're linked up to the 4 vector via the Nagwal, who's changed the crystal by observing it can then add more Higgs field to you to make you realer, change the nature of your assemblage point so that your assemblage point, instead of observing as a 2 load, observes you as a 4 load, and you can then gain the energy of a Nagwal simply from a Nagwal crystal. This would be then allowing you to channel. A non-channeler could channel, and you get your angrial. And if you made this even bigger, a bigger flow from the 5th dimension, more Higgs field, you get a sangrial. But what happens if the 5-dimensional observer, yours truly, who's in the 5th dimension, and we've now turned quartz crystals into angrials and sangrials, what happens if that observer not only has bilocated the 5th dimension and has moved their assemblage point into their centre, which of course is the last grail pattern, and you see with the ram's horn outside, you've got control of the negative torsion fields, the inorganic beings, whirls, the second attention, clockwise to gain, anti-clockwise to lose time density, or Kozyrev time density. What happens if the observer, yours truly, now what happens when a Nagwal that's bilocated in the 5th dimension without burning from the fire from within, merges with a time crystal. A time crystal, of course, allows you to go backwards and forwards, so you can go up the piezoelectric effect, you can go down the piezoelectric effect, you can go up the piezoelectric effect, you can go down the piezoelectric effect, and not lose any energy, and do it again and again and again, so you can make as many 5-dimensionally collapsed quantum wave function crystals as you like, and the observation that you're merged with a time crystal means the crystal in itself will have those properties, because when its assemblage point appears from its 0 point, it will have that property. Now, if we can extend the conscious verse, make new conscious verse with Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and we've got the bandwidth to put in more quantum information with this by slowing down the flicker effect. We can then have quantum perturbations from this new flicker effect to produce new quantum wave functions, which are observed by a 5-dimensional observer. So they're innately different than any other quantum wave function collapse anywhere, because they're 5-dimensional quantum wave function collapse, which physicists haven't even discovered. Merged with time crystals, where the Higgs field makes it real and goes back up again. Makes things real, goes back up again. So that in effect you've got a perpetual engine which is self-powering, and you've inputted from the conscious verse what you want it to do. You would then have a ter'angreal where you've actually got a modality to connect the conscious verse, quantum information, quantum perturbations, 5-dimensional quantum reality collapse, time crystal, perpetual engine, where cause and effect are interchangeable. So the device doesn't need any energy, it's self-perpetuating. And of course, making it doesn't need any energy, you just need to be the emperor who can make these things. Then you've got crystals which work because they change your assemblage point by observing them, rather than your assemblage point changing by observing the inanimate world. And if you move your assemblage point, you get a different reality observation. So the crystal moves your assemblage point to a reality where you, for example, are a vampire, or where you get a crystal that's an Atlantis crystal, or Rothschild crystal, or you get all the psychic warfare crystals, or the supernatural spirit crystals, or the RV science crystals, which change you, so the reality you observe is changed and the inanimate world around you is changed. Hence, of course, all of the crystals become ter'angreals, where they give you the services. The services come from the crystals, which have been changed by the emperor. And how, of course, can you change them? Well, you can change them from the 5th dimension. That means, of course, from the 5th dimension, that they're changed globally. And in fact, we haven't gone into broadening your crystals into the multiverse, where your crystals are multiversal too, and all possible realities of the powers and potential of the service come to you. All we've shown you is that with the inception of this video, all of your crystals have become self-powering, and the service that is inputted into the crystal comes to you simply by observing the crystal. And if you wish to fully link up to the service you bought within your crystal, what you've got to do is, so there you've got your assemblage point floating on the back. So when you've got your crystal, you simply hold it in your right hand and you put it to your back where your assemblage point is. To input the crystal into your assemblage point. Remember, the crystal hasn't got an assemblage point, it's at the 0 point. So your assemblage point loses some of its Higgs field to enter a merging with the crystal. The normal matrix observation of inanimate beings, when they've got some Higgs field, where they get Higgs field from, they're nagwals, nagwal man, nagwal woman. And you can see now why the AIs, which are matrix, simply have to have the Borg, and the Borg simply can't keep their Higgs field because it comes from the nagwal man and nagwal woman, and they got the nagwal woman duo, but they haven't got the nagwal man, and he simply plunged all of the filth into Omega Hell using the nagwal woman, who projects for the nagwal man. So since Dua's Borg, I simply used her to project Omega Hellization into everything and everybody. So you can see why World War III is coming and America's going to be covered with COVID-60, because nagwal men face the source, nagwal women broadcast whatever from the nagwal man into everyone else. And since Dua's been bald, and she hates the West and Jews and horrible things they're doing to the Gazans and was simply broadcasting the monster-eared hatred of Dua into everyone and everybody. Hence, what have we got in the Middle East coming up, Vinny?
Nice little war.
A nice little war. Anyway, to continue, the crystal then has been merged with your assemblage point, moved off its starting line from 0. So you take it with your right hand away back in front of you, observe it. So you've now linked with the crystal, and you then simply put it into your left hand, and this is really difficult, I know, for you vampires with the IQ of Vinny. You have to do this to then get your crystals and have all the services downloaded and make them self-charging, so the services work how they should have done but couldn't do because, of course, we hadn't developed the technology back in the past. You have to do this. You simply have to watch this video and the missing bits where we had the time change, the flicker change. We've got, who have you got working on the project? Who's got 2 of them going?
Nadia.
Yeah. Thank you, Nadia. Bad Joshy. Useless Joshy. I think you need sacking, don't you? Can't do a simple job like that. Anyway, you simply watch the video of the inception of the 5-dimensional emperor with the time crystal, and that then you're holding the crystal in your left hand. You can simply then upload that capability into your crystal by your act of observation. Remember, your assemblage point is entangled, linked with the pseudo-assemblage point of the inanimate crystal, and simply by observing these two videos, 1 and 2, plus the bits that Nadia, no thanks to Joshi, bad Joshi, useless Joshi, one then activates the crystals and they operate as tlantean-Crystals, and of course if you buy an angreal or sangreal, they then will boost the services that you've got from the other tlantean-Crystals to higher power levels with an angreal and sangreal. So that's simply put how tlantean-Crystals have been brought into the modern age, and the new branch in history has occurred where instead of going down the road to nuclear immolation and Armageddon, we're going down the road of Psi-Geddon, and those who got Psi technology rule the world, and those who are the victims simply become slaveware run by those with the technology, and simply become slaveware to those having Psi capability from the Emperor. Everyone else enslaved by this technology. So, as you can see, if the Nagwal woman is simply slaveware to the Emperor, it shows that if that's been done to the Nagwal woman, then all of you better become a vampire, because it's my way, or the highway to Dua, Lipa, slaveware, where you're simply run by me, for me, to do whatever I want. A whole new world is coming to being, where humans are simply overwhelmed by this technology, and free will, their ability to do anything, is simply overwhelmed, and they are simply run via the Higgs field, via the quantum mechanical fields, via quantum information, as simply objects. They become inanimate objects, because remember, if you take it to its logical conclusion, you can simply then draw out the assemblage points of the ball, the slaveware, move them into the center to null their assemblage point to make them inanimate objects, and then merge them with your assemblage point, as we've done with the crystal, and then use these time crystal inception, where I change the whole nature of reality and flicker effect, and then pull out with the left hand, so those former people become simply slaveware. They simply become tlantean-Crystals to you. And what do you mean by that, Tim? I don't quite understand. I don't quite understand, because I'm at video intelligence. Oh, sorry, we've gone from video intelligence to Joshi intelligence, haven't we? You didn't understand that we do the same thing to slaveware that we do to the crystal. So, but instead of this, we're pushing the assemblage point of the slaveware into the center to suck out all of its reality. And where does that go? Well, it comes into us, thank you. So what do you call things that suck out all the good stuff from people? Cameraman.
Vampires.
Vampires, exactly. And then, of course, you've turned the slaveware into inanimate objects. And then you treat them exactly like you do the crystal, merge them with your assemblage point, right hand onto your assemblage point, and then as the left hand watch the time crystal videos which do all the stuff. So you're inputting, because it's 5-dimensional, when we change the flicker effect, you're inputting what you're doing into the new reality. And since it's 5-dimensional, you can do it a year in the future, or 100 years in the future, or 1,000,000 years in the future. It was all done retroactively now when I made the video. And you can make any human or alien into slaveware by this method who isn't a vampire. And where did you get that from? Well, from the conscious verse, and input in the quantum information, the quantum perturbations, and the quantum reality collapsed from 5-dimensional observer using time crystals, so it doesn't cost any energy, and it's perpetual, so whatever they do to break free, they never can break free once it's done. And it was all created, built by the observers of Amazon Wheel of Time. Here it is.
What happens if we break our dark codes, right? Please don't talk. We lose our souls, a true death. But if you are brilliant, then you become something different. Not light or dark, something great. Do you want to be great? Try to. Try to.
I don't want to.
That's your block. I'm freezing.
Stop, Twilight, stop!
Do you want to be great, Jackie?
So you can see here, she's moving his assemblage point into the center, taking out all the good stuff from him, his Higgs field, his reality, turning him into an inanimate object. If you don't believe you can turn conscious beings into inanimate objects with no energy, read The Art of Dreaming, where the tenant creates conscious beings with no energy in his interdimensional world. That's in The Art of Dreaming. Here, we're turning former humans or non-humans, alien filth, into inanimate objects, and then rebooting them as slaveware, where they're simply observed by our assemblage point, made real by our assemblage point, and turned into grey men that we totally control. They're tlantean-Crystals that have been modified to be total slaves of their master or mistress. Or if you're gender fluid, they.
I'm only going to ask one last time. Do you want to be great, Jackie?
see her merging her assemblage point with the inanimate object, which is made inanimate by sucking dry via vampirism. Now she's turning into Angreal, a grey man, slaveware, which she controls. So if you've got the power, a Sangreal, you can literally turn whole nations into grey men, where every single occupant of that nation is controlled by you.
I have someone I need you to find.
And simply with the same methodology, you can use this on people who've got psychic powers. So anyone who's tries to develop this technology and isn't me can simply be slaveware in the same way. You've got the conscious verse there, built for you, and you simply grab them and grab their assemblage point. Push, move it into the center with your left hand, and as you do this, you're sucking out all of the realness and power from the victim. And remember, it doesn't matter if you do it front or back. You simply grab the assemblage point, move it into the center. If you want to make it easy, you can simply grab it with the left hand, pull it down, jam it to the midsection, into the center, turn them into an inanimate object as you suck them dry. And then simply what you can bilocate into this video, grab the power to turn that inanimate object into Dammon. And here's the video.
Physician, you did this. Good. Oh, stupid Egwene. The Adam only works on women who can channel.
I know. It didn't make sense to me how we could connect to each other. At first, I thought it was like the water bond. Then I realized that you can see our waves too. You feel it when I channel because we're linked. We're the same. You Sultan are just so weak in power, the searchers didn't find you.
No!
The first rule. You cannot hurt your Sultan. The only way you're getting out of this collar is if I let you out. But first, you have to let me out.
You're still my daughter. You still feel what I feel. If I die, you die.
So here we've got one of the American filth, Joe McMonigal, which we're going to put his Damon collar on, but we're not going to do it just to him, but to every single NATO Western psychic warfare filth, to make them simply Damon of the Psi-Lord, because they're simply being turned into slaveware. So we simply, while I get in, grab the assemblage point into the centre. There it is, pop, turned into slaveware. Gone. We've bilocated into that scene. Thank you, Amazon. Thank you, C.I.A. Thank you, Jews, Robert Jordan, Morton Janklow, and all the people that stole off me. And we've got the Daman to Angrion in the right hand. Push it into that slob's gut. Release. And then observation moves it into becoming simply slaveware with all the other American NATO filth that have any sort of psychic powers. Now all of my Daman, my slaveware, thank you very much, Western filth. And we simply concretize, finally, we simply concretize with these videos.
Energy lies in the quantum realm, a place where the rules of physics as we know them start to break down. What does this mean for our future? Can this time crystal really unlock the secrets of limitless power? In this video.
So, first of all,
there we are, and we've now gone back to the cause or the effect, and all of the American Western filth, because it's five-dimensional observation, remember, of the quantum wave function, have always been the slaveware of the Psi-Lord, and all their descendants and everyone else, past, present, and future, that is not a vampire, is simply slaveware if they've got psychic powers of the Emperor, yours truly. All done in one simple little video. Thank you very much. Tim Refat and Vampires enjoy. Western filth, not enjoy.